Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm MommaFoxFire, and I'm so glad you're here listening or watching today. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment and thank you for your support. Whether you're tuning in for the first time or you're a longtime listener, your presence here right now means everything to me. I love hearing from you guys, so please don't hesitate to share your thoughts on today's episode. You can drop a comment, send me a message, or join our community to take part in our discussions. We're all in this together, and I want you to know that your voice matters. Today, we're talking about something that's not often discussed, but is absolutely critical, and that's therapy for the educated. I'm calling this episode Therapy for the Educated, Pitfalls and Perils, because it's all about the unique challenges that people who are highly educated or who have done a lot of personal research face when they seek therapy. It's about the friction that can happen when a client knows a lot about their own condition and the therapist isn't ready for that level of engagement. And it's about what happens when the therapist's ego or insecurities get in the way of providing the care that the client truly needs. Therapy is supposed to be a safe space where we can be vulnerable, explore our feelings, and work through our struggles. But what happens when you're smart, educated, or just really well-informed about your own mental health? You might find that some therapists aren't as welcoming as they should be. They might feel threatened or uncomfortable when a client walks in with a stack of research or a deep understanding of their own issues right off the bat. And they might even see you as a difficult client, someone who's going to challenge them more than they're used to. And that's when things can go wrong. In today's episode, I sit down and talk with Jessica Medina, a licensed marriage and family therapist who's no stranger to these challenges. Some of you know Jessica's been on the show with me before, and every time she joins us, we dive into some real, gritty conversations about the realities of mental health. This time we're focusing on these specific hurdles that educated clients face in therapy and how those hurdles can turn into pitfalls if they're not properly managed. We're going to talk about why some therapists shy away from working with educated clients, how that can lead to harmful experiences, and what both clients and therapists can do to prevent that. If you've ever felt like you weren't being taken seriously by your therapist, or if you've been dismissed because you knew too much, this episode is for you. And if you're a therapist listening in, I hope this conversation challenges you to think about how you approach your work, especially with clients who might bring a lot to the table. This episode isn't about sugarcoating or tiptoeing around tough issues, and it's not about blaming the client or the therapist. It's about confronting the reality that therapy isn't always a smooth process, especially for those who are highly educated. But it's also about finding hope and solutions. So stick around because we're going to unpack some important truths today, and you won't want to miss it. As always, I encourage you to engage with this episode, whether it's by sharing your thoughts on social media, discussing it with friends, or reflecting on your own experiences on your own time. I'm here, as always, to break down the stigma around mental health and to create a space where we can talk openly and honestly about anything. So let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Jessica Medina on Therapy for the Educated, Pitfalls and Perils. Oh, okay. Hello. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday. I am sure y'all all recognize our guest for tonight because holy shit, this is the 6th time she is joining Even Tacos Fall Apart. She joined us even before it was called Even Tacos Fall Apart. So she is just, basically the guest of honor every time she comes on here. So please help me welcome Jessica Medina. Yay! Thanks for joining me again, Jessica. This is going to be fun.
So happy to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Bite, how are you today? Okay. Oh, a sunflower? Yes. So sunflowers, which you have on top of your little head, those are my favorite flowers.
It's been.
Oh, that's awesome.
Easily, but
They're my
Etsy.
favorite flowers because they turn their little heads every day to face the sun, and I think that that's just great. And it's just like they're following the sunshine, which is wonderful. So,
Watch. I'm gonna be outside like
yes, absolutely. If you go outside with that on, you have to be. Well, y'all, I am super excited for tonight's topic. It is going to be a little bit of like a deep one because of the way that it came about, which I'm going to get into. But I want to introduce Jessica. For those of you who haven't been here before for any of her appearances, Jessica Medina is a right, I know, is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She loves creating innovative and fun pop culture based therapy interventions such as Roblox, Animal Crossing, and Inside Out. Jessica uses techniques like mindfulness, play, geek culture, and pop culture to explore the chaos that can be everyday life, which, as y'all know, we always have chaos here, and Jessica always has chaos in her life too. So she has extensive experience working with kids, teens, and adults, school-based counseling, trauma, anxiety, divorce, depression, OCD, grief, LGBTQIA+, and alternative lifestyles, suicidal ideation, self-harm, and healing from difficult family dynamics. So like I said, this is her 6th time joining us, and Tyrion is bringing the chaos today. He really is all up in my face. So Jessica, like I said, thanks for joining. I do have some socials. If anyone is looking to connect with Jessica, feel free to do so. I'm going to pop those into the chat. And they didn't go to YouTube, so I'm going to do that one manually. 1 second here. There we go. Okay, now they're in for real in the chat. So if y'all are looking to connect with Jessica, feel free to do so. We are going to be talking tonight about therapy for the educated. I'm calling this the pitfalls and perils of that. And Jessica has super generously agreed to join me on a very last minute notice. And Jessica, I'm basically out of like icebreakers for you at this point. So we're going to start with, what is your favorite life hack?
Oh, that's a hard one. Full disclosure, since last time I've been on here, and now I am pregnant. I'm about 6 months pregnant. So if you are looking to reach out to me, I will be on maternity in June, but love hearing from people. Okay, so my favorite life hack. I have a lot of them. My favorite one would probably be looking at my chores like, well, I have two. Looking at my chores like I'm visiting Costco in the sense of executive dysfunction, and whiteboards are life. And I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. So for me, executive dysfunction is a bitch. It's kind of like, the way I explain it, I know I need groceries. So I pull up to Costco, I'm in the parking lot, walking up, get through the doors, and I'm like, holy fuck, that is a lot of options. I don't even know where to begin. Turn around, get back in my car, and go home. And nope, not today. Even though I know I really need to do the thing, and I really want to do the thing. But a lot of times, especially lately, that I'm tired all the fucking time, my body looking at like any chores, even if it's a great thing, like going out to LA and trying new food, one of my favorite things to do. But when my brain goes, oh my god, all the choices, the car ride, oh my god, where do I even begin? So then brain goblins say it's not fun anymore, not gonna do it, bye, avoid it like the plague. So I view it as going into Costco, but starting at just the samples. Not going all the way to the back or not going aisle by aisle, but starting a task as just a bite-sized sample. And what I mean by that is, say I have a 15-page paper due. I don't miss grad school at all. I wouldn't start with the whole 15-page paper. I wouldn't even start with paragraphs because that's daunting as fuck. I would start with bullet points. And then from that, turn it into an outline with bullet points. And then change those into sentences. But I'd only do a bite-sized chunk each time I touch it. So, and then more often than not, I find myself knocking out the whole damn thing before I even realizing it. It's kind of hacked my brain. Excuse my wonderful alarm system in the backyard.
I hear your sweet little dog.
That could be the end of it. We have thunder here in SoCal, so they're not the biggest fans, and they let us know. But we're all about getting our feelings out in this household. So.
Absolutely.
So that helps me with tasks. But the other thing I recommend to all my friends, all my clients, I mean, we're all neurodivergent, let's be real. I swear I need to write a book called Everyone's Autistic because myself included. But whiteboards are amazing. If I have a hard time picking a TV show or a book, whatever, or a chore, I'll write it on a whiteboard, number it 1 through 20, and roll a d20, see what I land on, and then do that. So it's kind of a way to my brain, so to speak, and turn it into a game, make it fun.
I love that. And I think it might have been you who was talking about the D20 and chores with your kid. I don't remember if that was you, and if it's not,
Probably,
then I'm sorry. Yeah. But like just being able to say, I'm gonna roll some dice and let fate decide whatever number that lands on is great. I do something really similar with my kids. I don't like to decide what we're having for dinner. If I'm not craving something in particular, I'm like, well, I don't want to make something that other people aren't going to like. I'm not going to make something I don't like, no matter what the choices are. So I always tell my kids, like, okay, here are your options. Y'all narrow it down to 2. And then one of you is going to pick a number. And I will, in my head, be like, okay, if they pick an even number, it's this one. If they pick an odd number, it's this choice. And so it's like giving them that, okay, narrow it down to what you both could maybe agree on if there are a couple of options, and then pick a number and I'll decide from that. But it's really not me picking. It's just me going, this one's evens, this one's odds, pick a number.
I love that. It's even saved my marriage and relationships. So often, like every couple, we disagree on what to watch, what to eat. So typically he'll pick one thing, I'll pick another, and we'll rock, paper, scissors it. And we've done that for so many things. It's great. It's a fun
I
little game,
love
too.
that. I love that. That's great. I mean, look, rock, paper, scissors works great too. And I will say, like, doing it that way also. So last week, my 17-year-old and he's driving now, but he's not quite to the point of driving far distances, and his therapist is very far away. And so we love his therapist. So we drive very far to get to her. And we were driving there and we were talking about what we wanted for dinner, because after therapy, we always get something or we go eat somewhere because I'm not cooking when we get back. We get back so late and it's like, there's just no energy there. So, we were like, well, what do we want to have for dinner tonight? Do we want Taco Bell? And he was like, well, maybe Schlotsky's, or a Taco Bell sounds good too. And I said, okay, well, do you want me to assign numbers and you pick a number? And he said, no, because I really want Schlotsky's and I don't want it to land on Taco Bell. And I'm like, there you go. That's the thing. It kind of tells you, if you get something and you don't like it, you can still be like, nope, I'm doing the other one, because that's what my heart just told me. Is that I really want Schlotsky's. I don't want Taco Bell.
Of how it works.
Yeah. Hey, that's what you gotta do. Oh, that's right. Okay, so Bite Mark, when Bite Mark's kid was trying to figure out what pronouns worked for him, he was rolling dice to pick his pronouns for a full week. And then he would roll for new pronouns the next week to like try them on, basically, to see like, how does this feel for me, and live with it and sit with it. But it was rolling dice for that. I knew it was something. Oh, that is great. Okay, well, I want to get us into the topic today. And what I want to do is just go ahead and read the comment that prompted this topic, because this is a listener topic that came to me just a couple of days ago. And someone reached out to me and said, hey, I loved your interview with this one. It was the interview with Justin Bethany. She was like, I loved your interview with him. You're a great interviewer. And we just started talking. And as we were talking, I could feel like a little bit of angst in her, I think. And I asked, is there something specific that you're wanting to know more about? And her comment back to me was, can you do an episode on how therapists approach smart and educated clients? They usually call them hard and try to ditch them by referring out. Can you also talk about ways therapy can be harmful sometimes? Mm-hmm. So I recognize that is a difficult topic, and it speaks from what I get from that is just a lot of frustration, and just kind of based on experience for her. So I wanted to hop on with someone awesome, and I reached out to Jessica, and she was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So here we are. So
Which I think is exactly verbatim what I said.
yes, yeah, it probably is. So kind of to warm us up a little, what would you consider to be a highly smart or well-educated client?
Yeah, it's a great question because to me, in the prompt, I would actually answer it two ways in the sense of how therapists handle smart and educated clients and how they handle the hard clients. Because at least on my end, I've seen them be two completely different populations with some intersection. So what I consider a highly smart and well-educated client to be, that's super suggestive because let's be real. While I am smart in therapy and psychology and sciences, I'm dumb as shit when it comes to math. So, highly smart and well-educated, I like to see it as not necessarily experts, but for lack of a better term, experts in their field and their area, whether it be in their job or whether that be in their education. So well educated, I would say college educated, but some therapists might define that as master's level or doctorate level because most of us are master's or doctorate level. But the field as a whole, I would say highly smart and well-educated client to be someone with a high productivity job or someone who is in a high position in their job and someone who is college educated, master's level or higher. At least what I've seen defined by my colleagues.
Yeah. Do you think also like so I have depression, I have anxiety, like all these things that I'm dealing with as a result of trauma. And do you think that someone who's willing to like put in the research on those topics could also be considered well educated in those topics after they start therapy or maybe before they start therapy? Like, is there a scenario where I am not educated in the mental health field. My degree is in business and marketing.
Right.
But is there a scenario where like maybe you've encountered a client who says, I've done all this research on my own and I want to talk through it with you. Do you consider that to be well educated, or is that just kind of maybe well informed? Might be a better term.
I consider that a mix of both, well educated and well informed. In the therapy world, I think that would be disagreed upon. Because that alone, I've seen looped into the hard or difficult client, where they come with a preconception, and I've seen a lot of personality disorders be labeled as hard and difficult, with borderline personality being one of the most that's referred out. The clientele that gets referred to me is neurodivergent clients, which I've seen are the hard or difficult clients as well. So I see this question kind of in both veins, in someone who has a high demand job, wealthy, so to speak, and well educated versus neurodivergent as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a fair thing to say. Like, there is quite a difference between you're educated and what you're an expert in. That's why you're an expert in it. Or you have this highly demanding job or whatnot. And then, that doesn't necessarily make you a hard client. But I mean, I will say, like, with my therapist, there have been some times where I've said, I read this study, and she said, shut the fuck up. Not in those terms, but I mean, we've got a great relationship. So, but it's like I bring her a lot of things, and it's not necessarily always something that's helpful, but I bring it from a very like, I'm curious about this. Have you looked into this? And the answer is not always yes, but we always have a good conversation around it. So, I mean, I guess, are there some common challenges that therapists face whenever they are working with either highly educated or people like me who like to be self-informed, perhaps?
Right. Common challenges, I see a lot of people sticking to one theoretical viewpoint that is not in line with the therapeutic relationship or what the client needs or asks for. I also, so like a lot of inflexibility, like say someone's like super psychodynamic or dead set on just DBT techniques or CBT or ABA, where they might not be flexible for someone who requires more nuance, like neurodivergency, for example. So it's not flexible. There's really rigid thinking. I see that, and I also see a lot of imposter syndrome, but displaced onto the clients, if that makes sense. Where the therapist would feel a blow to their ego and refer out because they feel like they can't work with a difficult client who's going to challenge them.
I think that really gets at kind of the heart of the question, is like those kind of moments where either the therapist just doesn't want to do that, or they feel like they're being, threatened in some way. Not like I'm gonna beat you up kind of threatened, but that kind of thing. So what are some potential reasons that a therapist might refer out one of those clients? And is that always warranted? I mean, I think we kind of just answered that, but are there instances where that really isn't what they should have done? I mean, we can always look at a situation and say, like, that shouldn't have happened, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, if you see the Facebook therapist page, this is all up on that shit. And there's a lot of times where people are like, you need to either refer out or consult with someone more knowledgeable, and the person like doubles down, and it shines light on what we're talking about here, where therapy can be harmful. But I've seen more, people not wanting to work with like hard clients, like the highly educated. I mean, shit. Both myself and several of my colleagues have had difficulties finding a therapist for ourselves, because not a lot of people want to work with therapists, even though we're people too. And it's seriously not as daunting as it seems. So I think that is one of being seen as a shit therapist or feeling incompetent. But it might be the schedule conflicts, because I have run into that sometimes with my highly educated clients as well, where they have a really high demand, but it also requires a deep knowledge of how to work with burnout, despite the client still being in their job. I mean, you can't tell a client with a high demand job who has no intention of leaving their job of, hey, this is burning you out, you need to leave your job. That's hard. There is nuance with working with clients who are highly educated. I mean, I personally take no offense to someone who comes to me with an article or something. I mean, if it's a client who constantly WebMDs themselves and be like, what the fuck are you doing? No, shut the fuck up. Not the shut the fuck up aspect, but of like, we talked about this. Like, is this in line with what we're working on? No, we're rabbit holing. Like, let's not. But also, I'm a chronic illness person myself who has mystery diagnoses, and to be taken seriously by my own clinicians, by supervisors, even in the mental health field, and doctors, I had to be well informed and well educated, because the specialists that I was seeing didn't know jack shit about what I was dealing with or even talking about. So I personally am not intimidated by it, but I think that's a huge factor of it, is feeling intimidated, feeling like our competence is going to be questioned. And let's be real, not a lot of people on this planet, let alone therapists, can handle that ego blow. I mean, I work with kids. I have no ego anymore. But I think that's why. It's feeling like they don't know enough, or that their competence is going to be questioned.
Yeah. So it's interesting to hear you say, like, as a therapist, it's sometimes hard to find a therapist. Like, you would, I mean, I guess from the outside of the profession looking in, I would think a therapist would love to work with another therapist as a client. That's not the case. That's a difficult thing.
It's definitely not the case. I mean, I even see that treating the kids of other therapists, which is the majority of the referrals and clientele I get. But I personally have even seen it where I would not hear back, and I've seen it in other Facebook groups as well, of a therapist reaching out and not hearing back, and then having the husband reach out. and the husband would hear back about the same exact issues. Now, I don't know if it's like a gender thing. I don't believe so. But yeah, as a therapist, I've even tried it myself of not saying what I do and saying what I do, and I get responses back when I don't share what I do, which is bullshit.
Wow. So you think it's just like, oh no, I don't want to, that's a can of worms I don't want to open? That's a bummer.
Oh yeah. Because I mean, if I were to go to therapy, I wouldn't talk about anything to do with my work.
Yeah.
But yes, it informs what I do because I'm a therapist, but that's not what I'm there to process. And I think that's where a lot of other clinicians get stuck, is kind of trying to predict or assume what the conversation is going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's a bummer, but it makes sense.
Right.
Okay, I've got a couple comments in the chat. I think we need a command for this one, growling. I once was told CBT is a good therapy, so I researched in advance and saw a dominatrix online, and now I have even more trauma. I think we need I think we need it because we've talked about this a couple of times, and it's like growling is fucking around. Like they're not really serious about that. They're joking because they've been here before when we've had like a whole ass conversation. I think we need a command that says like, is it Mental Health Monday? CBT means this. Is it not Mental Health Monday? Could mean cock and ball torture.
I work with Pink. It could go both ways. With 99% of my clientele and who I am as a person. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can combine the two if you're really creative, but not in therapy. Therapy doesn't include sex.
No. No. Oh, Bite, I like that. CBT, not CBT. Okay, we'll come up with a command for that for sure. Okay, and I want to go back to this one that Chess said. They said how to deal with derealization, feeling like you don't belong in the moment. And I don't know if you need more context to kind of go with that, or Chess, if you want to provide a little, like maybe like an example or something. But any thoughts on that, Jessica?
So more so the question between disassociation and derealization and depersonalization?
Maybe.
Okay. I feel like I'm in supervision again. I love it. I love it. So I do specialize in trauma. I have trauma myself. So disassociation is where we become detached from the present moment as a whole. And disassociation often comes as a trauma response. We have our amygdala, which is our body's smoke detector, so to speak. And we have several different responses. We have fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. I had to think about that last one. Okay. So a lot of times, though, that flight can be mentally, especially if in the trauma, we needed to not mentally be there to protect ourselves. And that could have came from freezing, fawning, whichever may be the case. But oftentimes in triggering situations, or even with neurodivergency, it doesn't have to be trauma, but it could be the body's nervous system being overstimulated, like with ADHD or with autism, like I have myself. Sometimes our brain just spaces out because reality is so overstimulated, it needs to go into its safe retreat. So disassociation would be going into that safe space in our mind as a whole. Depersonalization is when we feel like we're not ourselves or we're not in our bodies. So for me, that feels like my somatic sensations and my body sensations are kind of numb. I feel a little tingly when it happens to me, but I feel like I'm kind of like floating above myself. Like I'm not even in the here and now. I'm like a balloon watching over what I'm doing. For derealization, it's your surroundings. So it feels like reality is not reality. Kind of like being a sim, almost. So it's similar, but different. One's the umbrella of not being in the here and now. But one's more the who, one's more the where.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, are there any things that help with that? Like anything that you could recommend if someone like doesn't necessarily provide a lot of context, but any general things that people could try to assist with that?
So growing up, we had like pencil cases, like the little plastic ones. I recommend getting one the size of like that can fit in a backpack or in your desk, your car, your glove box, somewhere easily accessible. And I like the harder ones because I can include like little vials of perfume if need be. But I like to include something of each of the senses to help me reground back to reality and what's going on. I also have different like tells that those close to me know. For me, I blink a lot, or I'll go like this with my hands. So my husband would know to put his hand on my shoulder or somewhere that it's not going to like jar me or be even more triggering. And then he'll remind me to use like my self-care box. And my self-care box has something of each of the senses. So like mini little Play-Doh, which by the way, now this time of year is perfect to shop for a self-care box because of like
Oh.
Easter basket toys and
Oh
whatnot.
yeah, yeah.
The dollar section at Target, they have like fucking everything this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
But bubbles are great for breath. I like the mini little perfume bottles, like teeny tiny. Personally, I collect them. They're amazing. But having like something like that in there, or if you get like Ulta or like the makeup little advertisements that have the perfume page with the strip,
Mm-hmm.
you can cut those into little squares and put that in there too. But that has helped me the most when I'm disassociated.
Yeah, yeah. I think having, first of all, something that you've built specifically for yourself that you know is going to help. Like if you know these are the things that are going to help me most, and whether like Tib is saying, a plain cockpit where you can just flip all the switches. Like if you know that flipping switches is something that helps you, or if you know that something like having Play-Doh is something that's going to help
Right.
you, whatever you know is going to help you, having that set aside when you're not in that space. Like don't we talk about this sometimes for depression or anxiety or things like that. Like, don't try to come up with solutions when you're in a darker space. Like,
No.
do it whenever you're feeling good. Do it whenever you're feeling whole. Do it when you're feeling safe. And that way you can really put some thought into what's going to help you. Um, and then also having someone who can say, okay, I recognize what's happening to you, whether that's a spouse, whether it's a parent or even a child sometimes, not that you want to
Right.
put them into that responsibility position, but my kids know, like, if I'm touched out for the day, they know not to touch me. Like, there are things you can say,
Right.
like, "Dun, dun, mm, mm." So just having that community around you, whoever's around you, be a little bit more aware, and sharing that with them, I think, can really help also. So that's great.
Exactly.
And then Tib's got another question in the chat also. Let me know if this is off topic, but how does one convey oneself confidently but not giving egotistical or know-it-all vibes generally? For example, when seeing a professional, I try to explain what I know on the topic so they can tailor their advice and info in the short amount of time with them, but it sometimes comes off wrong. I don't think that's off topic. I think that's straight on topic.
It's right on topic.
Yeah.
Any therapist who's intimidated by the information you bring into the room, in my opinion, and I don't care if I'm attacked for this, is shit. Straight up. That is your time. Now, if you're coming in and you straight up were like, hey, I need to process my dog dying, and all you're talking about is like your neighbor or whatever, it's on the therapist to redirect towards goals. But I like even asking a question of like, hey, what's going on with the neighbor? Are you getting anything out of this? Like, do you want to go back to talking about your dog? Things like that. But for me, the more information, the better. I like to ask, like, hey, have you ever been assessed for neurodivergency? Or what was it like with past therapists? Have you ever been in therapy before? Tell me more. And I have clients who come in with fucking CVS receipts of what they think is going on, and I take it to heart. I look at those things, or I educate, and you know what? I don't think that's what's going on because of this, this, and this, or I think it's more in line with this because of this. But my clients are the experts on their lives, not me. Period. No matter how many years of training I have, no matter how many licenses I hold, I'm not the expert in my client's life. Plain and simple. And anyone who is intimidated by that or feel like they are the experts in everything to do with the client is honestly not client-centered. And I'll die on this hill.
I think it's a good hill, honestly, because if you go in and you're like I said, I do with my therapist. Like, I take her shit all the time. Okay, so that's how we roll together, and that's good. It works for me. But she doesn't always say like, this is what it is. Sometimes she'll say like, let's talk about why you thought that was a good idea to bring today. You know, and being able to have that open, honest conversation instead of being shut down is really important. And I think that goes for any situation, but especially a therapist relationship. Like, you should be able to talk to your therapist about things that are bothering you, or things that you're thinking, or things that you feel, that you perceive need to be discussed, as long as you're also open to hearing what they have to say back. You know, that's the other part of that, I think, that we haven't talked about, is you as a well-informed / well-educated client need to be willing to receive more education and more information and take it in and adjust your understanding as well. Exactly. Which, you know, I think the onus is more on the therapist in this case to be receiving and facilitate that a little bit. And Jessica can correct me if that's wrong.
No, that's really right. Really right.
But yeah, I mean, I think it does go both ways. I do agree with that. Oh, I love this. One of the things we added to my kid's mental health box was a list of things he might need from other people, so he could point to the thing if talking was too much. That's great. Like, I need a hug, or I need a snack. That's really good to say, like, I don't want to talk about it. I want to point to what I need and say, this is what would help me right now. That's awesome. That's great.
Love that. Okay.
Yeah. And then, okay, here's Chess again. Chess says, also, I feel like the day doesn't have enough hours to accomplish everything. Me too, for real. So I end up staying late at night as a way to gain control over my life. How to fix this? My friend, if you figure that shit out, I need the secret. It's revenge procrastination. Wait, hold on. Is that right? Wait, that might not be right. Hold on. Revenge procrastination. I'm just Googling what I think is right, so this is going to be confirmation bias, but revenge bedtime procrastination.
Yeah. I deal with that all the time. I mean, I find that often occurs on the days where I'm not taking advantage of my breaks. And what I mean by that is, if I'm on my break between clients and I'm like, okay, I need to do this for my business, I need to reply to this email, I need to do that, and I'm not just stepping away for even just 5 minutes, I don't feel refreshed. I feel like I've been working the entire time. So that the only time I do find solace or silence, in my case, is when everyone's asleep and no one's calling me, no one's messaging me, and then my sleep hygiene shit because I'm online engaging in the stuff I wish I engaged in during the day. So my advice for that, not that I typically give advice, you know, as a therapist, I try to stay away from that word, but schedule breaks and actually take them. Even if it's like 5 minutes, even if it's in the car on the way to something, on the way home, while taking a shit, whatever, go on TikTok if that's your comfort cozy, read a book if that's your comfort cozy, cherish those few minutes to yourself.
Yeah. I feel like many of us probably do this, especially in the community that we've built around Even Tacos Fall Apart, because we're all up at like 3 a.m. typing in the server and saying like, y'all should all be asleep, and then everyone's like, you should be asleep. So I fully understand what you're saying, Chess. Like, I get it. It sucks to feel like the only time you have to yourself, the only time that you have to do something that you enjoy or that you have control over, is when you should be sleeping. And I don't have a solution for that, because I do find myself staying up way too late. But I think, you know, maybe like Jessica's talking about, taking those breaks more seriously could be really helpful. And I've been doing actually a little bit better about that lately, because I have mandatory breaks during the day where like I have to walk down and get my kid from the bus stop. It's not a choice. And for a while I was taking work calls. Like, I would walk out on my phone taking a work call while I was doing that. And I stopped that about 6 months ago. I put a block on my calendar. It says out of office. I'm not available, period, end of story. Not available for this amount of time. It's 10 minutes. Like, it's not a big deal. But just walking out of the house and going down to the bus stop and really talking to my 10-year-old and saying, how was your day? How are things going? And being able, first of all, to connect with him a little bit, but then to also disconnect from work, because we live in a world where work is everything all the time. Right. And it fucking sucks. Okay. And it shouldn't be that way. And we shouldn't have to feel like we are obligated to work all the time. And as a single mother, I do feel like I have to work all the time. And I get it. I get it. I don't have solutions, but I feel you. I get it. Right. All right. So we're going to get back a little bit on topic. So are there specific ethical guidelines or standards that therapists should be following when they either terminate therapy with a client or refer a client out to another therapist?
Yeah, so I can only speak out of California because that's where I'm licensed. But if we terminate, we are supposed to give 3 options, at least, of referrals of who they can work with. For me, when I was in the agency setting, it was, if I remember correctly, 4 sessions, like a month to process. And it's supposed to be a process of, hey, we're terminating, or at least a session of, hey, we're terminating, this is why, this is what's going on, and here's some options and referrals. For me, I try to do minimum 1 to 2 sessions. I mean, sometimes if it's client initiated or like parent initiated, those are the fucking worst, where you find out like that morning you're not going to work with a kid anymore because of insurance, or the parent hates you, I don't know, all sorts of different reasons. And you don't really have that time to process. It hits clients hard. So I've always been told at least a session, and then you have to provide referrals. You cannot just ghost a client. That's actually called client abandonment. That's
wow.
Huge,
Yeah, I didn't realize there was like a kind of term for it, to say like, you either refer out or it's client abandonment. That's interesting.
Oh, it's a huge thing, at least in California, for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly, if there are rules around it, that's got to have a documented effect on a client's mental health whenever something like that happens. Yeah. Is there a negative effect even if they're still referred out, or is there any proof that helps to say like, I'm terminating you, but here's someone else you can talk to?
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, I just looked up the code of ethics because I was like, I know I read that somewhere in California. Per our license, marriage and family therapists, our code of ethics, it states specifically, marriage and family therapists do not abandon or neglect clients or patients in treatment. If a therapist is unable or unwilling to continue to provide professional services, the therapist will assist the client in making clinically appropriate arrangements for continuation of treatment. So, and even then, I mean, you're going to have clients that differ in you values-wise, belief-wise. We're supposed to work through it as a therapist with colleagues, supervision, classes, etc. We're still not supposed to terminate out. I agree and disagree with that. If it's something that you cannot work through, I don't think that the client should suffer at the hands of incompetence or inflexibility or difficulty sorting through values without a bias, if that's something that the therapist cannot do. I don't think a therapist should be forced, so to speak, to continue that therapeutic relationship. And in that case, I would want the therapist to refer out. But yeah, there's a huge impact on being unexpectedly terminated. I mean, I've kind of sort of had that happen with my own therapist. After waiting fucking forever for someone to get back to me, I had an amazing therapist. Super, super, super great. And if y'all have been listening for a while, I got in a car accident a couple years ago that forever changed my life. It's what highlighted heart issues. It's what highlighted the healing in my back and the fact that I have Ehlers-Danlos and my joints are basically wet spaghetti on a good day. And I'm grateful for that knowledge, but in that moment, I was having a real hard time. I mean, I was dealing with suicide ideation myself of if my doctors aren't going to take me seriously, what's the point? And I had this debilitating pain. I was going through a lot, and I hadn't heard from my therapist. And I had told her, hey, I'm used to people canceling last minute or sucking ass at communication if they can't make obligations. If you're late to session, just please let me know. Like, that is one of my biggest things that I need to work through. But it makes me not trust you if you don't take my time seriously.
Yeah.
And she had continued being late without letting me know. And I have had it happen with another therapist after her. But with her, it was like 15 minutes past, nothing. 30 minutes past, nothing. And I sent an email, nothing. Followed up a week later, nothing. Turns out she had her own like personal stuff going on, and it wasn't until I reached out saying, hey, I'm firing you because I needed someone here during this time where I was in crisis, and you weren't there. And I felt abandoned. Like, I felt like she didn't give a shit about me as a client, that she said fuck all to my self-advocacy and saying, hey, this is what I need as a therapist. And I think I'm a very transparent person. But to just ghost your client, that's really fucking shitty, because we develop a relationship with our clients. Granted, yes, it's therapeutic, but every single one of my clients, I can tell you with absolute certainty, I love the shit out of them in a unprofessional way, but right. I do hold a space in my heart for my clients, and when they're hurting, like, it sucks. I'm right there in the pain with them. And as a client myself, it's such a level of trust and vulnerability that you develop week after week after week of bearing your all and sitting through that discomfort and trusting someone to hold that space, and for them to just drop without, or are unexpectedly terminated. It leaves you with the feeling of, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Did I fail therapy? Even though I know as a clinician you can't fail therapy, except for just not showing up, I guess. But that unexpected termination, yeah, it feels like a breakup. It really does. And it hurts just the same. And it's hard not to feel like it's about you.
Yeah. And like you just said, your therapist was going through something personally, and I'm sure in a lot of cases that is likely what's going on, but in some cases it's not. And Bite's got a great example of that in the chat, a sad example of it, but she says, I had a therapist suddenly say I was fine and didn't need to continue therapy rather suddenly after I mentioned BDSM for the first time in the session, and it was hard for me to get back into therapy after that. I realized she probably thought she was nice about it, but I really wish she had just been honest that she had a personal issue. And that is something that, yeah, like, if you've got a problem with something that I talk about in therapy, like, just fucking tell me, hey, I wasn't comfortable talking about this in particular, and if you want to continue, that's fine, but I need you. Like, a therapist can set boundaries too. It's not just a client that can set boundaries and say this subject is off topic or whatever. A therapist can also set boundaries. But
in line with that, in the same vein of not harming our clients, if that's something like, say you're in the kink community, or that's a huge part of, I mean, I work with alternative lifestyles. Full disclosure, I used to be in the kink community professionally before I was ever even considering being a therapist, and I felt like I couldn't discuss it with my own therapist. My old therapist was an old white dude who I didn't feel was even remotely in touch with what I was doing in my life. And if someone said, hey, you're magically fine right after I talk BDSM again, I'm going to know or assume, incorrectly or correctly, probably correctly, that I touched a button and the values were not in line, but that's exactly what I mean, where if your values don't align and that's something your client needs to process, refer them the fuck out. Be honest, be humble. Because you are doing your client a disservice by not having that conversation of, hey, I'm not well versed in this area. I think you would really benefit from speaking with someone who is more knowledgeable in this area, or hey, I own up to the fact that I have a bias. You know, I have Christian values, which would never come out of my mouth, but say, like, I have Christian values and I really want to make sure that you're able to openly share and process through this, and I don't think that I'm the right fit for you in this moment. It's not you, it's me. No, seriously. Here are some colleagues who are in line with that. That's what a good therapist should do.
Yeah.
But a lot don't want to step back and instead are like, oh, you're fine, whether they're afraid of that confrontation, maybe, or they're afraid of it being reported against their license. I don't fucking know. But to lie to a client saying, oh, you're magically fine, magic wand, boom, all because someone brings up a culture, subculture, belief, interest, etc., that they're personally not comfortable with is shitty.
Yeah, that really is. Yeah. And I'm glad that I'm glad you worked through that and found someone who aligns much better with that. And there are tools, if anyone is wondering. I think we have a command. I think if you, now I'm not sure what it is. I think it's !sex positive, but that'll point you to a therapy finder where you can find sex positive kink allied therapists. There are tools that can help you find folks who are willing to, yeah, there you go, right there. See, I was right. Ha, for once.
You do exist. There are
therapists
who are not intimidated by this topic, or who are knowledgeable about this topic and will process it with you.
Yep. And Bite is the one who helped me set up that command and everything. So like, I know that it really works. So there you go. I did find a new therapist afterward. She's great and totally worth the struggle to get to. And that's what it takes. But y'all know I had a terrible first exposure to therapy. And I didn't go back for many years. Like, you can have a bad experience. Yeah, you can have a bad experience with therapy. It can turn you off. If I had not gone through something highly traumatic, I would not have ever gone back to therapy. And I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I did. And I, like Bite is saying, she found someone who was worth the struggle to get to. I found someone who was worth the struggle to get to. And it was great. But, like, therapists have a lot of power over whether someone is receptive to therapy in their future or not. And I don't know that that necessarily comes across in these kinds of situations, unfortunately. There are great ones out there. There are also shitty ones out there. All right, so taking it a little bit higher level, and we've talked through some of it already, but can you provide some examples of how therapy might unintentionally cause harm to clients, not just the canceling out referrals, but what about therapy itself has the potential to cause harm, and what can therapists do to either prevent or address these harms when they occur?
Yeah. I mean, I think it all boils down to power differentials. And that is a huge, huge part of ethics. Because if we have someone who's leveraging sex, for example, and that's why they say sex or therapy should never include sex. Don't fuck your client. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
But also, it's, and that's why if we get like a DUI, for example, we lose our license. A lot of people don't know that. But if we get anything that's like a felony, that shows that we do not have rational minds to make sound judgments for the safety of society. So anyone who uses that power differential to either not report abuse going on, or be the perpetrator of abuse, or doing things like breaking up marriages on purpose so you can sleep with the client, or maybe you don't like the male or the female or the partner or whatever in a couple's client, so you sabotage it. It's using that power that you hold as a therapist to cause that harm. or taking the trust that someone has placed into you and lying, like the BDSM case as well. It's using that power that you hold to cause harm. And that's fucking shitty.
Yeah. Are there any cases where, like, in the normal course of therapy, it could cause harm just like passively, kind of, I guess is what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Not like therapists intend to cause harm or do something unethical, but in the course of cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectic behavioral therapy or any, EDMR or anything like that, is there a chance or an opportunity that could cause harm innately?
Yes. And we see that a lot with like ABA, CBT. ABA is applied behavioral therapy. CBT in the kink community is cock and ball torture. But here is cognitive behavioral therapy. I hate and love how cock and ball torture came front of mind faster than cognitive.
It does for me as well. I'm just saying.
But I think it's putting theory, kind of like what I touched on earlier, putting theory before the client's needs. And what I mean by that is sticking to like applied behavioral therapy, which uses a lot of CBT techniques of thought, behavior, consequence. This thought was bad. I personally don't think thoughts are good or bad, but it's what we do with that information and how we self-regulate it, whether it be self-sabotage or self-soothing. But a lot of times with like neurodivergency, for example, using something like ABA, applied behavioral therapy, of saying you need to act this way because it's normal, it's like classically conditioning a child to behave to a command like a dog, and that's fucked up. And trying to condition someone to be neurotypical when they're hardwired not to be. And I've seen so much harm done with that. I mean, shit, my husband used to do ABA as a practitioner, and it wasn't until I got diagnosed, but also we became more knowledgeable about the field that we're like, ooh, that's not. And I get a lot of clients who are harmed by that. And a lot of my clientele are people who had shit experiences in therapy, and that's probably why I take pride in leaning into pop culture and specializing in the areas that I do, because my clients all the time say, oh my God, I feel so heard. And that's what pisses me off. And that's what really formed how I do therapy, because the disservice comes when we're no longer listening to our clients, when we think we know better than them, or when we are so rigid in our thinking of like, oh, we need to process this, and we're not following where the client is. I mean, yes, I've had clients go on complete tangents, completely off topic, not even remotely related to what we're supposed to, and it's my job to redirect back to that. But if the client's like, no, I need to process this, I'm not going to be like, fuck you, we're talking about this. It doesn't work like that. So it's being more flexible and actually listening to what the client brings in. Because I've had therapists who straight up were just like, or threw theoretical jargon at me. And I'm like, no shit, I already know that. I'm a therapist. Like, you're not providing me any information, just letting me vent, and I'm not leaving feeling any better about myself. I have no coping skills. And I even had one therapist who I saw for years, and I didn't even know my diagnosis until I got an ESA letter and saw it on there. And had I known that I was autistic or had OCD, I would have researched, I would have learned the techniques. So, I mean, it's a lot of it is, putting your theory above what the client needs and is advocating for.
I feel like that goes back to my first experience with therapy, which was someone who didn't really, they did just kind of sit there going, okay, here's a worksheet.
Hate worksheet.
Okay, do this. Okay, like here's another worksheet. Okay, read this. Like, that's kind of all she did. And I only saw her, I think I saw her 5 times. And that was it. Like I tried but at the time, this was a very long time ago, I thought that's what therapy was. Like, it was my first experience with it. I thought that was what it was supposed to be. It was kind of what was portrayed in the media at the time also. So it fit with my understanding. But it was just very like, okay, this is the worksheet that I already had pulled for you. And at the beginning, like of meeting you, I set aside these worksheets, and that's all I'm going to do with you is just these things. There's never any adjusting, never any like anything like that. So that what you're describing speaks to me.
Right. It boils down to, I mean, that's one of the major red flags. If you're not feeling heard, if you're
Yeah,
not feeling heard, if you're not feeling understood, it's okay to fire your therapist.
yeah,
It's okay. It's not okay for your
absolutely.
therapist to fire you and ghost you, but it's absolutely okay to fire your therapist.
Yeah. So, and now we've kind of talked about like, okay, here's some bad things, but we also know that therapy can be very positive, and we've talked about that a little bit too, like finding a therapist that is worth it and going through some things that are helpful. And the reason we know what's not helpful is because we can compare it to the things that are helpful. So, how do we reconcile the idea of therapy being helpful with the reality that many people have had these negative or traumatic experiences in therapy?
Right. I went through this myself, where
Mhm.
after my own shitty therapist, I was ironic because I was a therapist. I was like, fuck therapy. Therapy doesn't work. While I'm working as a therapist, right? Or going to school at that time to be a therapist. And what it took for me was kind of a mix of defining who I was as a therapist, but also realizing that there's so many different approaches to
Mhm.
therapy. And for me, I wanted to try them all. I was kind of like a dragon collecting interventions, so to speak.
Them to
So,
me.
right? So I think of my clients in those moments who are like, oh my God, you're not like other therapists. And I'm like, oh, thank God it's not all shit. Because I remember the saying, C's get degrees. C's get degrees in grad school too. It doesn't take a lot to pass those classes. They're not hard classes, and I still have seen my colleagues fail them. And no judgment, but if you're not educating yourself, you're a shit therapist, straight up. That's why there's CEUs, so that we are up to date
Mhm.
and current. So for me, what helped me was the self information or the research on my own and learning, okay, I know I'm neurodivergent, or I have a hunch, at least TikTok tells me so, in some of my clients, and they go on Reddit forums, they research it, and then they come to therapy with that, or they find therapists who are talking about neurodivergency in that lens. I found most helpful for me. So as someone who's pregnant, searching for a therapist yet again for postpartum, which I know I have depression. I know postpartum depression is probably going to come up. I know pregnancy rage has been a thing. So I've looked at different therapists who specialize in pregnancy or maybe holistic measures because I'm more holistic leaning, or in my case with my chronic illness, finding people who even know it exists or knows what it is. And it can be exhausting. I'll be the first one to say it. It's fucking exhausting to get rejection after rejection or no responses. I mean, I've seen people who have Psychology Todays that are up and updated and all that shit, but yet you won't hear back from them. And I hear time and time again, oh, I reached out to 10 therapists, I reached out to 5 and heard from no one. I mean, shit, as a therapist, it's happening to us too.
Yeah.
Not receiving clients, but trying to get our own therapist, right?
Mhm.
So research the different modalities that are out there. There's art therapy. For me, I love that shit because I don't like talking through my emotion. I'm a therapist. I intellectualize the fuck out of my emotion. And for me to be able to process, I need to turn my brain off. So what has helped best for me is psychedelic assisted therapy versus talk therapy. What has helped me the most is video games. So I use that with my clients. What has helped me is equine therapy, where I am not really talking, I'm interacting with a horse. So for me, it was knowing, okay, talk therapy is shit. I don't want talk therapy for my, well, talk therapy is shit for myself.
Yeah.
I do talk therapy for a living, but with talk therapy, it didn't work for me. I knew it didn't
Mhm.
work for me. I knew, no offense to old white dudes, I knew old white dudes were not coming from the place of my lived experience. So I wanted someone who was alternative. I wanted someone who was more holistic. So it's knowing what I needed and advocating for myself and trying to find therapists that were aligned with that. That's been helpful with kind of pushing against that negative or traumatic experience, and also knowing I could fire their ass at any time I don't like it and find a new one.
I think that last point of saying like you can fire, don't give up. Like you can say this is not working for me. Don't give up. Don't let that be your last interaction like I did for a long time, because I wish I had found a therapist. Like I wish I had gone from the 5 sessions with the shitty therapist and gone to another therapist and had 5 sessions with maybe a less shitty therapist. And like, even if I had made small progressions along the way, just being able to say, okay, I'm going to try these different things. And for the record, like talk therapy is what I need. Like that is what helps me the most, is just straight up talk therapy. Although one time my therapist looked at me and said, this was whenever we were going in person, she said, do you just need a nap today?
Yes.
And so she and I just sat, I didn't actually fall asleep, but she and I just sat for like 50 minutes in her office, and that was it. And it was perfect. It was what I needed at the time. But talk therapy, like that really does work for me. And I encourage you to, if you feel like you're concerned about the harms of therapy, really consider, is what I'm doing right now the right kind of therapy to be doing? Is something else something that could help me? And then is it something that my current therapist is willing to explore with me, or do I need to find another provider? Because that's entirely possible. Man, you said something earlier and now I forgot what it was, but I was going to comment on it, but then my brain kept listening instead of holding on to what I was going to comment on. But my brain knows that there was something that I was going to Oh, I know what our next topic has to be.
Yeah?
You got to come back and talk about psychedelic assisted therapy for a whole one. Holy shit.
Yes,
I want to dig into that. I know we can't do it tonight, but I want to dig into that. Like that needs to be our next.
I got you.
Seventh, number 7 in the works already. So what accountability measures are really in place to hold therapists responsible for any harm that they cause to clients, especially considering kind of some of the lack of regulation in some therapy fields, not all, but in some.
Yeah, and I think this is why life coaches get such a bad rap, because there's no regulation for things like that, and in the same breath, there isn't any training or certification that's required. So a lot of harm can be done with that. But we do have our boards, we do have our ethical codes. The board is a regulatory board, so they take consumer complaints and you can lose your license for that. But what I like seeing, I mean, this might be the inner millennial who loves chaos, but I love seeing other therapists hold each other accountable. I mean, we see it on Facebook threads all the time when people post unethical as fuck things on there. And who do they get drugged for filth? I'm just sitting there with my popcorn. But there's really not a lot, to be honest, aside from our regulatory boards.
Mm-hmm.
But other therapists for sure.
I mean, that kind of relies on the therapist who's maybe causing the harm to like self-tell a little bit, which is a bummer. But yeah, it's always nice to see someone in your own field be like, hey, that's kind of fucked up.
It's kind of heartwarming in a way, because you know, we see of the impact on people who are treated unethically, or you know, we might leave therapy feeling, oh man, that therapist is shitty. I hope this comforts y'all in the fact that they will be found out. They will open their mouth in some stupid ass way and they will be called the fuck out. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Are there any resources or support networks that you'd recommend that are available for folks who have been harmed by therapy, or even just experienced being dumped by their therapist? Is there anything out there?
Not to my knowledge. Not to say it doesn't exist, but I've seen a lot of camaraderie in the geek therapy community because we're used to being outcasted and not understood by society as a whole. So if I could recommend, I would recommend the geek therapy community because they know what it's like to
I love that.
But I'm sure there's support groups. I just have not heard of any personally, right off the top of my head.
And you're talking specifically about like geek therapy. That's the group that you're talking about. So first of all, like if y'all don't know about geek therapy,
I remember that.
Yes, yeah. If y'all don't know about geek therapy, I don't know why you don't know about geek therapy. I'm about to post their website in the chat right now because they're wonderful. They've got a website. Also, the tags is coming up very soon.
You're speaking at tags too.
Huh? I am speaking at tags this year. Yeah. Yeah.
We're both feeling, yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, what's your topic?
What is my topic? Using video games as SELs and IEPs.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so I'm talking about a client's journey of using video games for self-care. So I love it. That's awesome. But geek therapy is wonderful.
Yeah, I was just going to say in a few weeks I'm going to be at WonderCon talking about the same thing.
Ooh, fun. Nice. Yeah, that's exciting. That's awesome. Oh boy, I'm going to say this wrong. Can I just call you Cake? Kuroneko Cake says, "Hey Jessica." But yeah, geek therapy is wonderful, and they've got a great Discord, and there's all kinds of really wonderful, lovely people in there. And it's actually how I originally met Jessica, was through geek therapy. So that, I mean, look, beautiful people are in the geek therapy community here. So all right, so we're wrapping up. So if anyone has any more questions, make sure you get them into the chat. But this is the impossibly rare 6th magic moment. So you've already done this 5 times, but if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one more common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental health, what would it be? Oh,
I knew what we were going to talk about. And I had no problem coming up with ideas of what to talk about and what to explore. But this fucking question gets me every single time. And I was roaming around the house and I'm like, what haven't I talked about? Like, I don't even know. And I was asking my loved ones, like, what could I say? But it actually came to me in my own experience about how maternity leave, the stigma around that and the thought about that is that it's only for physical. And sometimes not even that. It's about baby bonding. But I have read somewhere that it takes 2 years for our bodies to go back to normal post-birth. And I mean, I challenge that with that. I don't think our bodies can ever go back fully to normal because that's a big change and a big life shift. But one thing I've seen during pregnancy that I wish more people were aware of is how lonely it gets. And this is not a woe is me thing by any means, but both before birth and after birth, I'm seeing a lot of this because my algorithms are algorithming on every single social media platform. But it's something I didn't even know existed until I reached out to my cousin who was pregnant not too long ago, saying, dude, does it feel lonely to you too? And she's like, God, yes. And I'm like, oh my God, shit, I didn't know this. Because so many people are focused on the fetus. And with every single check-in with all of my family, well, not all of my family, but most of the people in my interpersonal network are like, how's the baby doing? Any updates? I mean, I do have a select few that always ask how I'm doing. And that means so much. But I'm also at the age where a lot of my friends don't have kids. Or I do have friends, but their kids are way older. So there's not really that intersectionality. They don't know what to talk about with me because they think my life is all pregnancy and all of that stuff. I mean, I'm known as a stoner. So in my friend groups, not going out and going to like weed hangouts, for example. Like there's one in West Hollywood of Woody Harrelson. I can't do that. I can't go out to bottle shares like I would for St. Patrick's Day. And my life has changed because of that, but not a lot of people have checked in on the personhood behind that. And there's still so much that changes after giving birth, in that, again, all the focus is on the baby, not the mom who went through so much for 9 months and then is further alienated in a way. So I wish more people would realize that maternal mental health is a thing, especially during pregnancy and post, and it's not just postpartum.
Yeah.
It's so much more.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely valid, because it's tough. Like I have talked very openly about my postpartum depression, and had it not been for a badass rockin' OBGYN who really understood me, saying like, girl, go, you're gonna go see this person. I'm helping you set up an appointment right now. Like I would have just suffered, because I thought that's just how it was. And
Right.
her like seeing me as a person and what I was going through, instead of just like, how's your body and how's the baby, it took that to really kind of check in. And no one in my life had really done that. And not
Right.
that the onus is on other people to take responsibility for my mental health, but no one had done it. And it was like, I think that was at like my 6-week appointment or something like that. And so for 6 weeks, I had really been in this realm of suffering that I didn't necessarily need to be in, because it was fixed super quick with medication in my case, for postpartum. Now, my chronic depression that came later, not so much, but my postpartum depression was very responsive to medication. So like, yeah, that's just.
Oh, I'm
absolutely
going back on my psych meds the second I can. And that's another thing people don't realize. Like, we can't take a lot of psych meds that actually help. And like for me, my ADHD is fucking through the roof, mixed with pregnancy brain. So most days, and like right before this, it was the most chaotic, like, head ever. And that's every day of my life where I don't feel one with my body. Like, the depersonalization is absolutely fucking real. And I personally crochet to push past that, because I'm touching something, but I'm also able to kind of, for me, overthinking pushes me into disassociation. So turning my brain off, as counterproductive as it sounds, helps me reconnect to my body by doing something monotonous, kind of like EMDR almost, but with yarn. But it feels so weird. And then at six months pregnant, like, this kid is moving way more than they say it's supposed to move. It's supposed to move, like, he's supposed to move 10 times in an hour. In the last 5 minutes, I felt kicks damn near every other second. No one talks about that, though. No one talks about how it feels alien in your own body. Yes, pregnancy is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I signed up for this shit. Some people don't sign up, and it's a complete surprise, right? But no one talks about the mental health aspect of it, other than, this is what to expect when you give birth. Afterwards, this is what to expect. No one talks about the during.
Yeah.
It's all info dumping about the baby. And it got to a point where I straight up told my husband, I'm like, I need updates from your baby book. So I got him one for like dads, which is really, really cute because it's our first pregnancy. But I am so infoed out that I wish more people would be like, oh yeah, you're pregnant. That's a motherfucker on the brain. You're probably not feeling yourself right now. Let's go get massages. Or like, how are you doing? No, like, really, like, how are you doing as a person? Not as a mom, not as someone who's baking a baby, build a baby workshop over here, but as an individual. I really wish more people would give a shit about that.
Yeah. That's totally fair. And I absolutely agree. I think it's phenomenally important and really critical. Crochet, kind of like EMDR, but with yarn. I like it. Fight says, my favorite gift I got at my baby shower was some shampoo and conditioner that I loved but couldn't afford. All the baby stuff was great, but my bestie made sure I was still paying attention to me, and that was really special to me. Yeah.
I would cry. If I wasn't so exhausted. Hey, I'm tearing up right there. If I wasn't so exhausted, I'd be bawling right now.
Yeah. I've got tissues all over the place. So if you need one here, I'll give it to you through the webcam over there. So
Girl, I cry over the thought that I can't eat runny eggs. Like every
No.
time I talk, my voice just like
it did.
I haven't cried over shit this entire pregnancy. Right? I thought I'd be an
Aw,
emotional
I just
wreck
want to
because
hug you.
like, I am an emotional wreck on a good day. But the fact that I can't have runny eggs, or
Mhm.
even just hearing that of someone like, yeah, so you remember you're human too. I'm like,
Mhm.
but anything else, nothing.
Yeah.
Fucking runny eggs. And people giving a shit about
Yep.
shampoo.
Yeah. Look, I wish I could tell you that gets better after you're not pregnant anymore, but honestly, like I cry at ducks swimming in a pond, so I can't tell you that it
I
gets
cry at
better.
any puppy videos.
See?
So
Exactly. I am not the only one.
no,
I
I cry.
didn't think I was the only one.
It could be the most
Mm.
depressing like love story movie ever, saddest shit. The only thing that got me was oh my god, what's his name? He comes up with Somebody You Loved, I think. Oh my god, his name is escaping me. He's British or Scottish? And he has Tourette's and he had to stop touring.
Louis Capaldi?
Yes.
Yes.
I was like, it's not Ed Sheeran.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what.
Yeah.
Pregnancy brain, can't think of anything. His music video with the dog and the old dude.
Yeah. Look,
Don't
every
make
time I see the video, because all right, so y'all know my 10-year-old has Tourette's, and I showed him the video of I'm gonna cry talking about this, but I showed him the video of him not being able to finish the concert and like the audience just rallying and talking like or in like and singing the song for him, and he's just standing there and you can see his physical tics happening and he's just like holding the mic out and that's all he can do. And my 10-year-old like has not stopped listening to that song specifically because it's like it's just real, like it's just a real thing, and it's so cool to see stuff. Listen, I cry all the time, it happens, okay?
I love the community together like
yeah,
that, though.
it really
like,
is nice.
Songs are huge, but
yeah
any other
and now it's
questions?
gone, like that's it. See,
I
there
know,
and
right?
gone, no big deal. Okay, so Bite says I didn't ask my normal question, which is usually what is your favorite poem, because you've been here a bunch, but I guess a variant could be what is your current favorite poem or song, etc.
Shit. I should have known this was coming too. I would say, oh, that's hard. Oh, that's so hard. I mean, Johnny Be Good, but I'm biased with that one because my kiddo's name is Jonathan or Johnny. So that song was pretty much on repeat when we found out that I'm having a boy. But
Aww.
I love pretty much anything by Rufus Du Sol. Like that has been hitting my feels. I mean, Next to You was a song that we played at my wedding. And as we were walking back up the aisle with our puppies, and kind of as like a little family, it was our first dance because they weren't allowed in the reception area because of food and all that fun stuff. So that song is my happy song, Next to You, by Rufus Du Sol. Or Next to
Aww.
Me.
Next to
My
me, yeah.
pregnancy brain is glitching, but
Look, it happens.
It's a feel good song. He wrote it for his wife for his wedding, and it's really nice.
Aw, that is really cute. I like that. And then Growling says, regarding video game theory, have you ever bumped or touched on the fact that the entire point of 99% of modern video games are centered on winning by killing or violence? I wonder if that plays into how you pilot the experience.
No. Yes and no. Because a lot of times we don't have, I could do a whole another episode on this. My husband's probably like, woman, you said 7:30. But no, we were planning on playing video games right after this. So that's my self-care. But video games as a whole that have violence, it's been proven, do not cause violence or aggression. And I can talk for days on this. But at least for me, I'm in control so much of my daily job. Or I play the most boring fucking game with my younger client. I had a game where I had to role play as a chicken for an hour with a younger client, and it's sometimes so mind-numbing that I just need to destroy something. And it's safe for me to do so and cathartic in a game where I can kill people. And for me, it's not about the death, because you're going to respawn, but a lot of times it's about feeling like you have power and control when IRL you probably don't. Or you might not. And at least for me, going on, because I'm going to play Diablo right after this, watching the corpses explode is just, I don't know, it's just satisfying, and the graphics and the visuals. And I play Necromancer on there, and if you explode the corpses, you get blood orbs, which are basically your health.
Oh, nice.
So for me, it's less about the death factor. It's more make shit go boom. But also, I am fueled by chaos. So I love survival games. I love games that give me that sense of rush and adrenaline, because I'm so used to sitting in trauma and fucked up cases, very high crisis clients, that it's nice for me to go into a world equally chaotic and fuck shit up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make me violent? No.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think
it's we were talking about.
I think in a lot of cases, it really is kind of the catharsis of like, okay, I'm going to go in here and I play, healer in some games, but sometimes it is nice to snipe someone from across the map and be like, yeah, fuck you, not to that person, but to something in the game, or to a player in the game, or to get a really good shot at something. Or my kids play Fortnite together, and then they have a really great celebration around when they win. And so I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with that. I think that there could be plenty of cases where like you get so wrapped up in a video game that it becomes unhealthy, but it's not about the violence. That's about it becoming kind of an obsession. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm going to talk about, because that did happen to me. I got too wrapped into a game, and I had to like recognize that and pull it back. But I did a whole episode, and I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna go look on my website and see if I can find. I can picture her. She's blonde, and it was very early in the show. What is her? Hold on, I'm gonna go back and look and see what her name was, because it was wonderful. We talked about video game violence and the fact that it doesn't really indicate Amelia. Oh, wait. Yes, Amelia Herbst. Violence in geek and gaming communities. And what we talked about was that there's not really a connection between IRL violence and playing violent video games. Like, that's not necessarily a thing. So I'll go back and find a link to that, because that's that's a very old one. So, but I'll find a link to the Twitch highlight and make sure to post it in the Discord for everybody to be able to go back and look at. But yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see. Appearance number 8, violence in video games and how it's fine. Oh, I like that though. We could talk. I mean, I don't mind. Look, I don't mind revisiting topics, because 7 is psychedelics and therapy. It is. It truly is. Even in highly realistic games like Sniper Elite, it's satisfying for whatever reason. Overwatch, Overwatch versus Overwatch 2. Listen, we're not going there. That's fine. Well, I'm going to post your socials one more time, so if anyone's looking to connect with you, they can do so. And also, like, you're in our Discord, so if anybody's looking for you, your happy little brains in there. So make sure that you connect with Jessica in any way. And Jessica, thank you so much for joining me again and again and again and again and again. I love you. I always have such a good time when you're on here with me. So I appreciate you very much. And this was a beautiful conversation.
Absolutely. The next time I'm on Mufasa or Simba, my kid.
Yes, I expect full lift and then spin in your chair. Absolutely. Safely, all that good stuff. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I hope you found my conversation with Jessica Medina insightful and eye-opening in some way. Therapy can be a game changer, but as we've discussed, it's not always a one-size-fits-all solution, especially for those who are highly educated or who have done their homework on their own mental health. It's important to remember that therapy should be a space where you feel heard and respected, not judged or dismissed. One of the key takeaways from today's episode is that it's okay to advocate for yourself in therapy. If you feel like your therapist isn't on the same page as you, or if you're being labeled as difficult just because you know your stuff, it might be time to reassess that relationship. You deserve a therapist who is willing to meet you where you are, who values your input, and who is open to learning alongside you. We also talked about the potential harms of therapy when it's just not a good fit. This is real, and it's something we need to be more aware of. If you've had a bad experience, please know that it doesn't mean therapy isn't for you. It just means you haven't found the right therapist yet. Keep looking, keep advocating for yourself, and don't settle for less than what you need. Now, before we wrap up, I want to remind you to stay connected with me and with the Even Tacos Fall Apart community. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Even an emoji, any engagement helps. Plus, your feedback helps this show grow and reach more people who might benefit from these conversations. And I love hearing what resonated with you, what topics you want to hear more about, and how we can keep improving. This podcast episode today came from a listener suggestion directly. If something in today's episode hit home for you, or if you have your own story about therapy, good or bad, I would love to hear from you. Let's keep this conversation going. You can reach out to me on social media. I'm MommaFoxFire everywhere, or drop a comment wherever you're listening to this episode. And don't forget to share this with anyone you think might benefit from it. We're all about breaking down the stigma around mental health and creating a community where we can talk openly and honestly about our struggles, our triumphs, and everything in between. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, and for being a part of this community. Until next time, remember, even when things fall apart, we're still here, we're still standing, and we're still moving forward. I'm MommaFoxFire, and I will catch you in the next episode.